So you're buying a rental house. Hopefully, you've already watched the first video in this series on how to inspect a property before you buy. If you haven't yet, go watch our last video on if you should flip or rent. So now, after those, you know you want to rent. You're in this for the long haul. But what should you do? Should you rent it long term or should you rent it short term? How do you want to make your money? We're going to go into this. Also, how this decision relates to ice cream.
The ice cream.
And even at the end, I go into what I think is happening in the short-term rental space. So let's get into it. What is a short-term rental? These are also referred to as STR. It's Airbnb, vacation rentals, corporate rentals, anything that is not long-term. Long-term would be about a 12-month or longer lease. The biggest difference is they bring in their own furniture. Short-term, they're not bringing their own furniture. You have to supply it. There are lots of reasons why people use short-term rentals. This could be a vacation. This could be a sporting event. This could be a family reunion. However, there is a distinct usage difference between the two. And because of that, there's a price difference. It's a lot more like a hotel, with some differences there as well. So that's what a vacation rental is, what a short-term rental is. Having a rental is like the base flavor of ice cream. As long as you pick the right location, the right flavor, you're gonna make money. It's gonna taste great. The short-term rental is like the toppings. It can make it a lot better.
Yes, chocolate vanilla swirl with cookie crunch, please.
Or it can make it a lot worse. There's 3 areas I look at to help me determine whether I want to stay in a long-term rental or upgrade it or change it over to a short-term rental. The first thing I look at is the numbers. What's my ROI, return on investment? With a short-term rental, you are providing the furniture. That means it's going to take even more money out of your pocket to get it going. What are your management costs? You're paying for the cable bill, you're paying for the pool bill, you're paying for the landscaping, you're paying for the internet, etc., etc. You have a lot more monthly expenses with a short-term rental than you do long-term, where the tenant takes care of it. You need to make sure all these numbers work out, exactly how much money you're gonna make. And then you need to compare that to the long-term. Because it's gonna take more work, you need to make sure that the spread, the difference between long-term and short-term is worth it. Why deal with the headache? This brings us up to number 2. To deal with the headache, you're gonna need management. You're gonna have to take care of it. First off, are you self-managing this property? Are you wanting to deal with all the communication? Do you wanna contact all the team members that you have? Are you gonna self-manage or are you gonna pay some property manager to look it over? Now, management doesn't just stop there. You're gonna need a full team. You're gonna need a realtor to help you find it and buy it and sell it eventually. You're gonna need a house cleaner, you're gonna need a handyman, and you're gonna need that property manager. You're gonna need those 4 at minimum. There might even be more people that you need. How much work is it gonna take to actually make that team? And you're gonna make that team for one property? Lots of questions and expenses that come with it. Make sure you're adding those in on step 1. There's a lot more work, a lot more management in general to a short term. You're evaluating it, once again, that profit you're talking about in number 1, is that worth the extra management? Let's go into number 3. The third area I look at is the property itself. Remember, we talked about vacation, sporting events, etc. Most of the time, they're slightly larger groups, more demand. So how many bedrooms does it have? Does it have a pool? If it's a vacation, that might be nice. What are the other amenities in the community? Could be a public pool, could have tennis courts. All these things come into play for your guests. Also, what about the condition of the property? With a long-term rental, you might not always have to have the latest and greatest, the most updated, the 2020, 21, 22 standards. With an Airbnb, VRBO, these short-term rentals, people want it to be nice, which also goes into your numbers. Look at the property, the location of where it is. Is it right by the airport? That could be noise. It could also be convenient. The bars, the restaurants, all of those things people love and people hate. So you need to take into account those things. And what is the saturation of your area? Are you buying right next to a bunch of other vacation rentals? Why should they pick yours over there? That will help determine what your vacancy rate is, or how many vacant nights that you have. What's your daily, nightly rent? All of those factors go into the numbers. The very last few things I always look at that's still part of the property itself is whether it's in a gated community. With a long-term tenant, it's easy to give them the remote or the code. You don't have to worry about changing the code all the time or them losing the remote. And if they did, it'd be easy to charge them to get a new one. Short term, the turnover is very high, and do you really want to deal with that? The HOA limits these sometimes to 30-day stay. You might not even be able to do a short-term rental. And if so, maybe you have to stick to the 30, 60, 90-day mark. You know, do more of a corporate rental, hiring to a business where they put in their employees or traveling nurses, etc. So look at the property. You already know you want to hold on to it at least long term, but these items can help you determine whether you should change it over to a short term or leave it long term. What have I seen in this market of short term rentals? We're seeing it with the HOA, we're seeing it with the city. We've had 2 local cities, Scottsdale and now Mesa, have dramatically added new regulations on what your minimum requirements are, because there are community problems with this, with party houses, some violence, etc. And there are things personally you can do to help that. We have a responsibility to our community, so make sure you're doing it right. However, because of that, you are seeing tightening and tightening on how restrictive vacation rentals are. I expect to see more and more regulations. Those that are just dabbling in this space, I think a lot of them will be kicked out. And it'll just be those that are serious, that know what they're doing, and that do it the right way. A new video comes out every Thursday. Click the next one. Let's go.